Do-hyun stood at the entrance of the Galactic Council chamber and took a deep breath. The doors before him were massive, made of some crystal material that seemed to glow with its own light. Behind those doors waited representatives from 47 different alien species. None of them had ever seen a human before. "Ready?" Mireille asked beside him. She adjusted her uniform one last time. Her hand rested near her sidearm, though Do-hyun doubted weapons would help them here. "As ready as I'll ever be," Do-hyun replied. The doors opened silently. The chamber beyond was enormous, stretching upward into shadows. Seats curved around a central platform in rising tiers, each one occupied by a different alien form. Some had scales, others had fur. Some had too many legs. Others floated without legs at all. 1,000 eyes turned to watch the two humans enter. Do-hyun heard the gasps immediately. Whispers spread through the chamber like wildfire. He caught fragments of translated words. Impossible. The myths. They're real. FS. They're real. A tall reptilian creature stood from the highest seat. Its scales were deep purple, and its eyes were the color of old gold. "I am Velthan, keeper of council history," it said. Its voice was translated by the device in Do-hyun's ear. "You claim to represent humanity?" "We do," Do-hyun said. He kept his voice steady and calm. "I am Do-hyun, and this is Mireille. We come in peace, seeking to join the Galactic Council." Another being stood up. This one looked like a giant insect, with multiple arms and faceted eyes. "This is not possible." It clicked. "Humans are not real. They are stories we tell to frighten children." Mireille's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Do-hyun stepped forward onto the central platform. "We are very real," he said, "and we would like to understand why you think we're myths." Vel then descended from his seat, moving down the tiers with careful steps. The historian stopped a safe distance from Do-hyun, as if afraid to come closer. "The human myths are ancient," Vel then said. "They speak of creatures from a death world, a planet so violent that everything there evolved to kill. The myths say humans feel no pain, that they refuse to die even when their bodies are broken, that they hunt for pleasure and fight for honor, even when there is no hope of victory. They say humans are demons," added the insect being, whose name was Crix. "Berserkers, who cannot be reasoned with, monsters who pack bond with anything, even their prey, and who will destroy entire worlds to protect those they claim as their own." Do-hyun listened to this with growing understanding. Humanity's reputation had reached the stars before they had. But the reputation was wrong. Partly wrong, anyway. "We are from Earth," Do-hyun said carefully. "It is true that our world is dangerous. Everything there has evolved to survive in difficult conditions, humans included. But we are not mindless killers. We have laws, culture, art, and philosophy. We have come here to prove that." "Why now?" Vel then asked. "Why reveal yourselves after remaining hidden for so long?" "We weren't hiding," Mireille spoke up. "We simply didn't know you existed until recently. We've been exploring our own region of space. When we detected your communication networks, we decided it was time to make contact." A murmur ran through the council. An alien with blue skin and no visible mouth spoke through a device on its chest. "If the humans are real, then we face a crisis. The myths say they cannot be stopped once they begin fighting. How do we know you will not turn on us?" Before Do-hyun could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. Council members rose from their seats in confusion and fear. A holographic display appeared above the central platform, showing a star system Do-hyun didn't recognize. Multiple red dots moved through it, surrounding several planets. A voice spoke urgently in a language that took a moment to translate. "Emergency transmission from the Talmar colonies," the voice said. "The Kavrine horde has begun their attack, requesting immediate military assistance." Civilian casualties, already in the thousands. Please help us. To my contentin. Round the place. Our Alaten. The Kavrine horde has begun their attack. The chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Vel then raised his arms, calling for order. Silence, he commanded. When the noise died down, Crick spoke. The Kavrine horde cannot be reasoned with. They are conquerors who take what they want. But our combined military forces are scattered across the galaxy. It would take weeks to assemble a defense fleet. Weeks the Talmar do not have, Velden said grimly. Their colonies will fall in days. Dohyun watched the holographic display. The red dots of the Kavrine fleet surrounded the Talmar worlds completely. It was a coordinated attack, designed to overwhelm any defense. He had seen similar tactics in human history. How many ships does the Horde have? Mireille asked. Creeks turned its faceted eyes toward her. 47 warships. Each one carries thousands of warriors. The Talmar have no military to speak of. They are a peaceful species. And you're going to debate while they die? Mireille's voice was hard. We must discuss options, Vel then said. We must vote on a course of action. We must consider the political implications. People are dying right now, Dohyun interrupted. Not in a few days. Now. While you talk. The council chamber fell silent. Every alien stared at the two humans on the central platform. Dohyun took a step forward. You wanted to know if the myths about humans are true. You wanted to know if we are monsters, or if we can be trusted. He looked around at all the watching faces. Let me tell you what is true about humans. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight when fighting is necessary. And we don't abandon people in need. He turned to Vel then. We have one ship in this system. One frigate with a crew of 300. Give us the coordinates of the Talmar colonies. We'll go. Crix made a sound that might have been laughter. One ship against 47? This is the human madness the myths speak of. You will die. One. Mireille smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Maybe. But we'll buy time for you to decide what kind of people you want to be. Vel then studied the two humans for a long moment. You would do this? Knowing you cannot win? We don't come here to be myths, Dohyun said quietly. We came to be allies. And allies protect each other. The historian touched a device on his wrist. I am transmitting the coordinates to your ship. He paused. May your gods go with you, humans. You will need them. Dohyun and Mireille turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Behind them, the council erupted into arguments once more. But Dohyun didn't look back. There was no time for looking back. As they reached the exit, Velden's voice called out one more time. If you survive this, the council will remember what you have done. Dohyun stopped at the threshold. He looked over his shoulder at the assembled aliens. If we don't survive, he said, remember it anyway. Remember that when you needed someone to act, humans didn't hesitate. The doors closed behind them, and they ran for their ship, the frigate Times. Indomitable Times dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talmar system. Ji-Wan stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display with cold calculation. 47 enemy warships glowed red on the screen. Each one was larger than the Times. Indomitable asterisk. Each one carried weapons designed to crack planets. Well, Hyunwoo said from the pilot station. This should be interesting. Ji-Wan allowed herself a small smile. That's one word for it. She turned to her communications officer. Broadcast on all frequencies. Tell the Talmar that help has arrived. Commander, shouldn't we wait for the rest of the fleet? The officer asked. We are the fleet, Ji-Wan replied. For now. The bridge fell silent. Every crew member understood what that meant. They were 300 humans against 50,000 Kavrine warriors. The numbers weren't just bad. They were impossible. Sua stepped onto the bridge, carrying her medical kit. "Marines are ready for deployment," she reported. "All 200 of them." 200, Jiwan repeated. "Against an invasion force of 50,000. She looked at her crew. "Anyone want to suggest we wait?" No one spoke. Jiwan hadn't expected them to. These were human soldiers. They had all volunteered for the first contact mission. They knew what that meant. "Hyunwoo, take us in," Jiwan ordered. "Full speed. Make us hard to hit." "Yes, Commander." Hyunwoo's hands moved over his controls. The times. Indomitable times surged forward, accelerating at a rate that would have killed most alien species. Humans could endure it. Barely. The tactical display showed the Kavreen fleet beginning to react. Several ships turned toward them. Weapons charged. Jiwan watched the distance close. "Reading massive damage to the colony on Talmar Prime," the sensor officer reported. "Multiple cities burning. Kavreen ground forces have landed in force." "How many civilians?" Jiwan asked. "Unclear. Estimates suggest millions still alive, but scattered and hiding." Jiwan made her decision. "Hyunwoo, ignore the warships for now. Get us to the planet's surface. We need to deploy Marines before those civilians are found." Jiwan. 2. Jiwan. "Commander, the warships will fire on us," the tactical officer warned. "Let them," Jiwan said. "Humans are hard to kill. The Talmar aren't. We protect the civilians first." The times. Indomitable times dove toward Talmar Prime, weaving through space with impossible agility. Kavreen warships fired. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked through the void. Hyunwoo dodged most of them. The ones that hit shook the ship but didn't stop it. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported. "Seal it and keep moving," Jiwan ordered. They entered the atmosphere at a steep angle. The ship's hull began to glow, red from friction. Alarms wailed. Hyunwoo pulled them out of the dive at the last moment, leveling off just above the treetops of a burning forest. "Drop zone ahead," Hyunwoo announced. "One of the smaller cities. Kavreen forces have surrounded it." Jiwan activated the ship-wide communication. "All Marines. This is Commander Jiwan. We're dropping you into a hostile zone. The enemy outnumbers you badly, but there are thousands of civilians who need protection. Do what humans do best. Stay alive, and make the enemy regret meeting you." The deployment bay doors opened. 200 Marines in combat armor jumped from the ship, using jetpacks to control their descent. Sua went with them, her medical kit strapped to her back and a rifle in her hands. The times, indomitable times, pulled up and away, drawing Kavreen fire. Jiwan watched the tactical display as her Marines landed in the middle of the enemy formation. The Kavreen warriors stood twice as tall as humans, with 4 arms and thick armored skin. They carried weapons that could punch through concrete. They had been bred for war across 1,000 worlds. The first wave of Kavreen charged the human landing zone. They expected to overwhelm the tiny force immediately. They learned their first lesson about humans in the next 60 seconds. Jiwan watched through the helmet cameras of her Marines. The humans didn't form defensive lines. They didn't dig in and wait. Instead, they spread out and attacked. Private Minho sprinted toward 3 Kavreen warriors, sliding under their weapons' fire. He came up inside their reach, and his combat knife found the weak points in their armor. All 3 fell before they understood what happened. Sergeant Nari used her jetpack to leap onto a Kavreen's back. She jammed her rifle against the base of its skull and fired. As it fell, she was already moving to the next target. The Kavreen had expected the humans to die quickly. Instead, the humans moved like they were born for this. They were faster, more adaptable, and completely unpredictable. When wounded, they kept fighting. When outnumbered, they attacked harder. Sua found a group of Talmar civilians huddled in a collapsed building. The civilians were small, barely reaching a human's waist, with large eyes and delicate features. They looked at her in terror. It's okay, Sua said gently, though they probably couldn't understand her words. I'm here to help. A Kavreen warrior smashed through the wall, roaring. Sua turned and fired 3 times. The warrior stumbled but kept coming. She fired 3 more times. It fell. Come on, she said to the Talmar, gesturing. We need to move. She led them through the ruins, fighting when necessary, hiding when possible. Other Marines were doing the same throughout the city, gathering civilians and protecting them. Above the planet, Hyunwoo piloted the Times. Indomitable Times through a storm of enemy fire. He performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. 12G turns that pressed his body into the seat. Atmospheric skimming that brought the ship so close to the ground that it left a wake of destruction behind it. Commander, I've got 3 Kavreen fighters on my tail, he reported calmly. Lose them, Jiwon said. Already did. Just thought you'd like to know. A massive explosion bloomed on one of the continents below. Jiwon checked the sensors. What was that? Enemy ground forces hit a Talmar school, the sensor officer said quietly. It was full of children. The bridge went silent. Jiwon felt something cold settle in her chest. She had been prepared for battle. She had been prepared for death. But this was something else. This was deliberate cruelty. New orders, she said. We're not just protecting civilians anymore. We're hunting. New. On the ground, the Marines received the updated orders. Their tactics changed. They stopped reacting to the Kavreen and started predicting them. They set traps. They used the terrain. They turned the enemy's size and strength against them. Corporal Junho found a Kavreen supply depot and rigged it to explode. The blast took out 50 warriors and destroyed enough ammunition to supply an army. Lieutenant Hana led a team into the Kavreen landing zone and sabotaged 3 of their transport ships. When the Kavreen tried to evacuate wounded warriors, the ships exploded on the launch pad. The Kavreen began to realize they had made a mistake. These humans weren't soldiers in the way the Kavreen understood. They were something else. Something that refused to quit. Something that became more dangerous when wounded or cornered. Sua reached a makeshift shelter where hundreds of Talmar civilians were hiding. She found a young Talmar child, barely alive, crushed under rubble. The child's guardian was already dead. I've got you, Sua whispered. She worked quickly, applying medical foam to stop the bleeding. Her supplies were running low, but she didn't hesitate. She used the last of her pain medication on the child. A shadow fell over her. She looked up to see a massive Kavreen warrior standing there, weapon raised. Sua stood up slowly, placing herself between the warrior and the child. She had no ammunition left. Her rifle was empty. But she didn't move aside. You're not touching them, she said. The warrior studied her for a moment. Then it laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. It raised its weapon. 3 shots rang out. The warrior fell. Jiwon stepped out of the smoke, her sidearm still raised. Never leave a Marine alone, Jiwon said. She helped Sua pick up the child. How many civilians here? 400, maybe more, Sua replied. They'll get it. The ship is coming back for evacuations. Above them, the Times. Indomitable Times descended through enemy fire once more. Its shields were failing. Its hull was scorched and torn, but Hyunwoo brought it down perfectly, landing in the middle of the civilian shelter. The evacuation began. Marines formed a perimeter, fighting off wave after wave of Kavreen attacks. Civilians rushed into the ship. Sua stayed outside, treating the wounded as they arrived, refusing to board until everyone else was safe. The battle raged for hours. Then, days. The humans had been fighting for 72 hours without rest. Their armor was damaged, their weapons worn. They should have collapsed from exhaustion. They kept fighting. The Galactic Council watched through long-range sensors, transmitting the data to their chambers. They saw the impossible happening. They saw 200 humans holding back 50,000 Kavreen warriors. They saw a single ship outmaneuvering an entire fleet, and slowly, they began to understand. The myths about humans were wrong, not because humans weren't dangerous, but because the danger wasn't mindless rage. It was purpose. It was determination. It was the absolute refusal to abandon those who needed protection. The humans weren't berserkers. They were guardians. And that made them far more terrifying than any myth. Taeyang moved through the corridors of the Kavrin command ship like a ghost. Behind him, 5 more humans from the Special Forces team followed in perfect silence. They had been inserted through an airlock breach, using nothing but magnetic boots and determination to cross the void between ships. Zero gravity didn't slow them down. Humans had learned to fight in every environment their harsh world offered. Space was just one more. "Command ship bridge is 3 levels up," whispered Unji through the communication link. She was monitoring from the Time's indomitable asterisk, guiding them through the enemy vessel. 16 hostiles between you and the target. "Understood," Taeyang replied. He raised his fist, and his team stopped. Through the corridor ahead, he could see 2 Kavrin guards. They were massive, even bigger than the warriors on the ground. These were the elite. Taeyang didn't hesitate. He pushed off from the wall, floating silently through the zero gravity. His knife was in his hand before the first guard even knew he was there. The blade found the weak point at the base of the skull. The guard died without making a sound. The second guard turned, but Unji was faster. She fired her suppressed weapon twice. The guard drifted backward, purple blood floating in zero-gravity droplets. They moved on. On the planet below, the battle had reached a critical point. Yuna, captain of the Times, indomitable asterisk, studied her tactical display with growing concern. The ship had taken too much damage. Shields were gone. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Weapons, systems failing, but the evacuation wasn't complete. Thousands of Talmar civilians still needed to be rescued. "Captain, we need to retreat," her second officer said. "The ship won't survive another attack run." Yuna looked at the display. She could see her Marines on the ground, still fighting, still protecting. She thought about Do-hyun's words in the council chamber, about being allies, about not abandoning people in need. "Maintain position," she ordered. "We leave when the last civilian is aboard." Althor. Clom. Alth. The Kavrin fleet was closing in. 47 warships against 1 damaged frigate. The mathematics were simple and brutal. "Captain, the flagship is charging its main weapon," the sensor officer reported. "It's targeting us directly." Yuna made a decision that she knew would end her career. Or her life. Probably both. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the planet's surface," she ordered. "Engineering. I need everything you can give me to the engines. We're going to ram the flagship." The bridge fell silent. "Captain," her second officer said quietly, "you heard me. Get everyone off, except the bridge crew." "That's an order." "With respect, Captain, we're not leaving either." Yuna looked at her crew. They were all young, all volunteers. They had families back on Earth. They had futures waiting for them. But they looked at her with determination, not fear. "All right," she said. "Then let's make this count." The Times, indomitable Times, turned toward the massive Kavrin flagship. Its engines, damaged and failing, nonetheless responded. The ship began to accelerate. On the planet, Jiwon saw what was happening. She understood immediately. "All units. Full evacuation. Get every civilian to the surface shelters. Move. Now." The Marines responded instantly. They grabbed Talmar civilians, carrying them to safety. Some Marines carried 3 or 4 of the small aliens at once, running through enemy fire without slowing down. Sua found an elderly Talmar who couldn't walk. She lifted the alien onto her back, ignoring her own wounds, and ran. Behind her, a building collapsed from Kavrin bombardment. She didn't look back. In the command ship, Taeyang reached the bridge. He placed magnetic charges on the door and stepped aside. The explosion blew the door inward. His team moved through the opening before the smoke cleared. The Kavrine warlord sat in the center of the bridge, surrounded by officers. His name was Krevtok, and he had conquered 17 worlds. He looked at the humans with something that might have been respect. "So the myths are true," Krevtok said in perfect English. Apparently, he had been studying the enemy. "Humans do not know when to quit." "No," Taeyang agreed. He kept his weapon trained on the warlord. "We don't. You cannot win this battle. My fleet will destroy your ship. My warriors outnumber yours 50 to 1. "Maybe," Taeyang said. "But we'll make you regret ever coming here." Krevtok stood up slowly. He was enormous, towering over even the tallest human. His 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through steel. "I have seen your soldiers fight. They are worthy opponents. But they are still just soldiers, following orders." "You're wrong," Taeyang replied. "We're not fighting because someone ordered us to. We're fighting because it's the right thing to do." The warlord tilted his massive head. "Explain. Those people on the planet below. The Talmar. We didn't know them 3 days ago. We had never met them before. But they needed help. And no one else was coming. So we came." "That is illogical," Krevtok said. "They offer you nothing in return. That's not why we do it." For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Krevtok studied the human before him. He had fought hundreds of species. He understood strength and weakness, courage and cowardice. But this was something new. "What are you?" the warlord asked. "We're human," Taeyang said. "And we don't leave people behind." Before Krevtok could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the command ship. The tactical display showed the times. Indomitable times, accelerating directly toward them. "Your ship is going to ram us," Krevtok observed. "Yes," Taeyang said calmly. "And you're going to order your fleet to stop firing on the planet. Right now." The warlord's eyes narrowed. "Or what? You will kill me? My warriors will continue fighting. Maybe. But you'll be dead. And we'll keep killing your warriors one by one until they get the message. Humans are really good at killing when we need to be. We've had lots of practice on our death world." Krevtok looked at the human for a long moment. Then he looked at the tactical display, where the times, indomitable times, was seconds from impact. He thought about the reports from the planet, where 200 humans had held off his entire invasion force for 3 days, where human soldiers had fought without rest, without retreat, and without surrender. The myths had been wrong. Humans weren't mindless berserkers. They were something far more dangerous. They were warriors, with a purpose. "Cease fire," Krevtok ordered his fleet. "All units, cease fire and withdraw to orbit." Taeyang touched his communication device. "Captain Yuna, abort ramming course. The enemy is withdrawing." On the bridge of the Time's indomitable asterisk, Yuna pulled back on the controls at the last moment. The ship's engines screamed in protest. They passed within meters of the Kavrine flagship, so close that the 2 hulls nearly touched. Then they were past, and the Time's indomitable times began a slow turn back toward the planet. On the surface, the Kavrine warriors heard their orders and began to retreat. The Marines watched in silence as the massive aliens withdrew to their landing ships and took off. Elder Prisizna, spiritual leader of the Talmar, emerged from a shelter. She had witnessed the entire battle. She had seen human soldiers fighting for 3 days without rest. She had seen them sharing their food with Talmar children, while their own wounds went untreated. She had seen them carrying civilians to safety through enemy fire, never leaving anyone behind. She found Jiwan standing among the ruins, covered in blood and dirt. The human commander looked exhausted, but she was still standing. "You saved us," Prisna said through her translator. "Why? We can offer you nothing. Jiwan looked at the elderly Talmar. You don't need to offer us anything. Helping people isn't a transaction. It's just what you do. Sua approached, limping badly. Her medical kit was empty. Her armor was cracked, but she was smiling. All civilians accounted for, Commander. 0 Talmar casualties in the last 6 hours. Human casualties? Jiwan asked. Sua's smile faded slightly. 47 dead. 163 wounded. But we got them. We saved 400,000 Talmar. Jiwan nodded slowly. 47 good people had died. 47 families back on Earth would receive the news. 47 graves would be dug. But 400,000 people were alive because of them. Pass the word, Jiwan said. Tell every Marine they did well. Tell them, we're proud to serve with them. Above the planet, the Kavrine fleet gathered in orbit. Krevtok stood on his command bridge, watching the human ship limp back toward the surface. It was barely functional, held together by determination and luck. Warlord, we could destroy them now, one of his officers suggested. They are helpless. Krevtok shook his massive head. No. Send a message to the fleet. We are leaving this system. The Talmar are under human protection now. Anyone who attacks them will face us. His officers looked shocked. Warlord? You saw what 200 humans did to 50,000 of our warriors. Imagine what would happen if humanity sent a real army. Krevtok turned away from the viewport. We came here expecting to fight civilians. Instead, we found something from the ancient myths, and the myths did not prepare us for the truth. What truth, Warlord? That humans are not monsters. They are guardians, and they are far more dangerous than any monster could ever be. The Kavrine fleet departed the system. Behind them, on the surface of Talmar Prime, humans and Talmar worked together to put out fires and rebuild what had been destroyed. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives from 47 species watched the recorded footage and realized that everything they thought they knew about humans had been wrong. The myths were dead. Reality had taken their place. And reality was far more impressive than any story. Do-hyun stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time, the chamber was different. There were no gasps, no whispers of fear. Instead, there was heavy silence. The aftermath of the Talmar battle had spread across the galaxy. Every species had seen the recordings. They had watched humans fight for 3 days without rest. They had seen the times, indomitable times, nearly sacrifice itself. They had counted the cost. 47 human lives to save 400,000 Talmar. Beside Do-hyun stood Mireille. Her uniform now carried medals from the Talmar government. She wore them without pride, just quiet acceptance. Behind them stood survivors from the battle, still healing from their wounds. Vel then descended from his seat, moving slowly. The old historian looked tired. The council has reviewed all evidence from the Talmar incident, he said. We have much to discuss. We do, agreed Crix. The insectoid security chief clicked his mandibles together nervously. The Kavrine prisoners. There are over 2,000 of them. The council has voted. They will be executed for their crimes. Do-hyun had expected this. Galactic law was harsh. War criminals rarely survived their trials, but he shook his head anyway. No, he said simply. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in dozens of languages. Vel then raised his arms for silence. You cannot refuse this, human. Vel then said, these warriors murdered thousands. They destroyed entire cities. Under council law, they have forfeited their lives. Under human law, they have the right to fair treatment as prisoners of war. Do-hyun replied. We don't execute prisoners. A blue-skinned delegate stood up. This is outrageous. The Kavrine showed no mercy. Why should we show them any? Mireille stepped forward. Because we're supposed to be better than them. Explain, demanded Crix. Do-hyun took a breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. My people have a long and bloody history. We've fought thousands of wars. We've committed terrible atrocities. We've done things we're ashamed of. He paused, making sure every council member was listening. But we learned from those mistakes. We created laws to govern how we fight wars, rules about the treatment of prisoners, protections for civilians. These rules exist because we know what we're capable of. We know the darkness inside us, and we choose to be better than our worst impulses. Pretty words, said another delegate. But these are Kavrine warriors. They are bred for war. They will never change. Before Do-hyun could respond, someone else entered the council chamber. Seo-jun walked slowly, supported by medical equipment. His face bore scars from torture. His left arm ended at the elbow, lost to a Kavrine blade. The chamber fell silent. Seo-jun had been captured during the initial Kavrine attack. Before the times, indomitable times arrived. He had spent 3 days in a Kavrine prison camp. The torture had been systematic and cruel. The Kavrine had wanted information about human weaknesses. They hadn't gotten it. I am Seo-jun, he said. His voice was quiet but steady. I was a prisoner of the Kavrine. Vel then leaned forward. You have every right to demand justice for what was done to you. I do. Seo-jun agreed. That's why I'm here to argue for mercy. Rum. The chamber erupted again. This time, Velden couldn't quiet them immediately. The idea that a torture victim would defend his tormentors was incomprehensible to most species. Seo-jun waited for silence. When it came, he continued. The Kavrine who tortured me believed they were doing their duty. They were following orders. They were raised in a culture that taught them conquest was honorable. He held up his remaining arm, showing the scars. What they did to me was wrong. But killing them won't undo it. It won't make me whole again. It will just create more death. They deserve to die for what they did to you, said a delegate. Maybe, Seo-jun said. But I deserve to be better than they are. Humanity deserves to be better. If we execute prisoners because it makes us feel better, how are we different from them? A small figure moved through the council chamber. Elder Prisna of the Talmar stepped onto the central platform. Her people had suffered the most from the Kavrine attack. Cities had burned. Thousands had died. The Talmar people have also voted, she said. We support the human position. No executions. The chamber fell into shocked silence. Your people were the victims, Crick said. You have the greatest right to vengeance. Prisna looked up at the towering insectoid. We saw what humans did for us. They shared their food with our children while they went hungry. They used their last medical supplies on our wounded. They died protecting us. She turned to address the entire council. If humans, who had never met us before, could show us such compassion, how can we show less to our enemies? They taught us that strength is not about how much harm you can inflict. It is about how much mercy you can afford. Do-hyun felt something tight in his chest. The Talmar understood. They had seen the best of humanity and chosen to follow that example. Vel then was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What do you propose we do with the prisoners? Trial them fairly, Do-hyun said. Those who committed war crimes will face justice. But justice doesn't mean automatic execution. It means appropriate punishment. Prison, rehabilitation, community service. Give them a chance to become something other than warriors. The Kavrine don't know how to be anything else, Crix argued. Then teach them, Mireille said. That's what civilization is supposed to do. Transform violence into something productive. The debate continued for hours. Council members argued from every perspective. Some demanded blood for blood. Others saw wisdom in the human approach. The chamber was divided. Finally, Vel then called for a vote. The results were close, but decisive. By a margin of 3 votes, the council agreed to the human proposal. The Kavrine prisoners would receive fair trials rather than automatic execution. As the session ended, delegates approached Do-hyun and Seo-jun. Some congratulated them. Others expressed doubts. A few were openly hostile, believing humans were too soft to survive in the harsh galaxy. One delegate, a being made of crystalline structures, spoke quietly to Do-hyun. "You realize what you've done? You've shown weakness. Other species will see this as an invitation to attack you." Do-hyun met the delegate's faceted eyes. "Let them try. They'll learn the same lesson the Kavrine did. Humans are dangerous when we fight. But we choose to fight only when necessary. That's not weakness. That's discipline." Later, in a private chamber, the human delegation gathered. They were exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The battle had cost them friends. The political fight had cost them strength. Mireille sat down heavily. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Do-hyun looked at Seo-jun, who was being treated by Sua. The medic worked quietly, adjusting the equipment, keeping him stable. "I don't know," Do-hyun admitted. "Maybe some of those Kavrine will never change. Maybe they'll escape and kill again. Maybe showing mercy will cost lives." "Then why do it?" Mireille asked. Seo-jun answered before Do-hyun could. "Because the alternative is to become like them, to let violence define us. Humans have been down that road before. It led to some of our darkest moments." He looked at his missing arm. "This hurts. It will always hurt. But I can live with the pain. What I couldn't live with is becoming a monster to fight monsters." Sua finished her work and stepped back. "The council is watching us," she said. "Every decision we make sets a precedent. We're not just representing ourselves. We're showing them what humanity stands for. One. After 79 one every to 79. And what do we stand for?" Mireille asked. Do-hyun thought about the question. He thought about the Marines who had fought for 3 days without rest. About Yuna, who had been willing to ram her ship into an enemy flagship. About civilians sharing food with strangers. About Seo-jun, tortured and maimed, arguing for the lives of his tormentors. "We stand for the idea that being strong doesn't mean being cruel," he said finally. "That winning isn't just about destroying the enemy. It's about proving there's a better way to live." Outside the chamber, the galaxy was changing. News of the human decision spread quickly. Some species were inspired by it. Others saw it as confirmation of human weakness. And some, like the Kavrine, began to reconsider their entire understanding of strength and honor. In the Kavrine fleet, now far from Talmar space, Krevtok received word of the council decision. His warriors would live. They would face trial, but not execution. One of his officers was confused. "Warlord, the humans defeated us in battle. Why would they show mercy now?" Krevtok looked out at the stars. "Because they are teaching us a lesson. They want us to understand that they could have killed us all, but chose not to. That their power comes not from their willingness to kill, but from their ability to show restraint. Is this weakness? No," Krevtok said. "This is something far more terrifying. This is a species that knows its own strength so well that it doesn't need to prove it. They could destroy us. They choose not to. That choice makes them more powerful than any weapon." The officer didn't understand. Few did. But Krevtok had seen humans fight. He had seen them bleed and die for strangers. And he had seen them offer mercy to enemies who deserved none. The myths had called humans demons. The myths had been wrong. Humans were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were warriors who fought for peace, killers who chose mercy, conquerors who offered friendship, and that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because they could destroy you or save you, and you never knew which they would choose until it was too late. 10 years had passed since the Battle of Talmar Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Do-hyun walked through the halls of the Galactic Council as Ambassador General, the highest diplomatic position a human had ever held. His hair had turned gray at the temples. He moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent a decade negotiating peace between species that had been at war for centuries. The council chamber was different now. Humans sat among the delegates, no longer visitors but full members. Other changes were more subtle. The way delegates talked to each other had shifted. There was less posturing, more genuine discussion. Ambassador General, Vel then called out. The old historian was even older now, but still sharp. A moment of your time? Do-hyun joined him on one of the observation platforms overlooking the chamber. Below, representatives from 73 species debated the issues of the day. I wanted to tell you something, Vel then said. When you first arrived, I was terrified. The myths had haunted me since childhood. I truly believed humans were demons, come to destroy us. And now? Do-hyun asked. Now I tell different stories to my grandchildren. Stories about the humans who came when no one else would. Who fought for people they had never met. Who showed mercy when vengeance would have been easier. I'm many, Do-hyun smiled. The new myths? Better than myths, Vel then replied. History, truth, example. On Talmar Prime, in the rebuilt capital city, a young Talmar named Taemin sat in a classroom. He was part of the first generation to grow up after the war. Around him sat students from a dozen different species, all learning together. The instructor was human. Sunho had been a Marine during the battle. Now he taught at the Galactic Defense Academy, training the next generation of protectors. Today we're going to talk about when to fight and when not to fight, Sunho said. He moved around the classroom with a slight limp, a permanent reminder of the war. Anyone can pull a trigger. Any species can learn to kill. The hard part is knowing when you should. Taemin raised his hand. Teacher Sunho, during the battle, the humans could have left us. You could have run when the Kavrin came. Why didn't you? Sunho stopped walking. He looked at the young Talmar for a moment. Because running would have been easier. And humans don't always choose the easy path. We choose the right path, even when it costs us. But you lost so many people, another student said, a Kavrin youth. 47 dead. Was it worth it? The Kavrin students were a new development. After the war, some young Kavrin had rejected their species' warrior culture. They sought to learn a different way. The academy had accepted them, though it had been controversial. Sunho looked at the Kavrin student. Every person we lost was someone's child, parent, or friend. Their loss left holes in the universe that can never be filled. So no, it wasn't worth it in that sense. Nothing is worth that cost. He paused. But 400,000 Talmar are alive today. They're not worth more than the humans we lost. But they're not worth less either. We made the choice that the people who couldn't protect themselves deserved to live. And we'd make the same choice again. We AT, and we AT. Across the galaxy, in the human sector, Admiral Mirai commanded a coalition fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Ships from 15 different species flew in formation, trained according to human military doctrine. But it wasn't the doctrine from the old human wars. It was something new, forged in the aftermath of Talmar. It emphasized protection over conquest, defense over aggression, mercy over revenge. Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal, her communications officer reported. Unknown hostile force attacking a mining colony in the Theta sector. Mirai studied the tactical display. The colony was small, barely 3,000 inhabitants. Not strategically important. A decade ago, most species would have ignored the call. The mathematics didn't justify the response. All ships, set course for Theta sector, Mirai ordered. Maximum speed. Her bridge crew didn't question the order. They had been trained by humans. They understood that strategic value wasn't measured only in resources or territory. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Within hours, they would arrive at the colony, and whoever was attacking would learn the lesson that dozens of species had learned over the past decade. You could threaten humans and their allies, but you couldn't do it without consequences. In a small cafe on Earth, Sua sat across from Sojun. She was retired now, though she still taught emergency medicine at the academy during her visits to the Galactic Council Station. Seojun had learned to function with his prosthetic arm. The scars on his face had faded, but never disappeared. "Did you see the news?" Sua asked. 3 more Kavrine youth enrolled in the academy this term. Seojun nodded. "I met one of them. Her name is Kira. She told me she wants to learn to protect instead of conquer. Because of what we showed them? Maybe," Sojun said. "Or maybe because we showed them there was another choice. That strength could be used for something other than domination." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching humans and aliens walk past the cafe window. Earth had become a hub for galactic culture. Aliens came to study human history, trying to understand how a species from a death world had become known for compassion rather than conquest. "Do you think we changed the galaxy?" Sua asked. Seojun considered the question. "I think we showed the galaxy it could change itself. That's more important." Back on the academy station, Sunho's class had ended. Taemin stayed behind, approaching the instructor's desk. "Teacher Sunho, I want to ask you something personal," the young Talmar said. "Go ahead. I was there during the battle. I was just a child, but I remember. I remember you carrying me to safety. I remember you giving me water when you didn't have any for yourself." Sunho nodded. He didn't remember the specific child, but he remembered the actions. All the Marines had done the same. "I want to join the defense forces," Taemin continued. "I want to help protect others the way you protected me. But my parents say the Talmar aren't warriors. We're peaceful. They say I should honor our traditions." Sunho leaned back against his desk. "Being peaceful isn't the same as being helpless. And protecting others isn't about being a warrior. It's about being willing to stand between danger and those who can't defend themselves. But what if I'm not strong enough? Talmar are small. We're not built like humans or Kavrine. Strength comes in many forms," Sunho replied. "During the battle, you know what helped us more than anything? The Talmar, who guided us through the city, who told us where civilians were hiding, who shared their knowledge of the terrain. Combat is only one part of protection." Taemin thought about this. "So I don't have to be a soldier? You have to be whatever you're suited for. Engineer, medic, strategist, diplomat. The galaxy needs all of it. Find where you fit, and then be the best at it you can be." As Taemin left, Sunho felt a sense of satisfaction. This was what the battle had been about. Not just saving lives in the moment, but changing the future. At the edge of known space, Admiral Murray's fleet arrived at the besieged mining colony. The hostile force was a pirate gang, preying on the weak and undefended. They took one look at the coalition fleet and surrendered immediately. No shots were fired. No one died. The pirates were taken into custody, and the colony was saved. It was unremarkable, routine even, and that was the point. 10 years ago, this colony would have been destroyed before help could arrive. Now, help came quickly and decisively. The galaxy had learned that attacking the defenseless would bring swift response. As the fleet departed, the colony's leader sent a message of thanks. "You came so quickly. We didn't think anyone would help such a small colony." Mireille smiled as she sent the reply. "Size doesn't matter. People needed help. We came. That's what we do." In the council chambers, a new crisis was developing. 2 species on the verge of war over a territorial dispute. A decade ago, such disputes often led to violence. Do-hyun sat in the mediation chamber with the representatives from both sides. He didn't have any special leverage or authority beyond his position. But he had something else. The example of what humans had done. "You're angry at each other," he said. "I understand. You both feel wronged. You both want justice." The two delegates glared at each other across the table. "But consider this," Do-hyun continued. 10 years ago, humans came to this galaxy. We were strangers. We didn't know any of you. And when we saw people in danger, we fought for them. We died for them." He leaned forward. "If we could do that for strangers, surely you can find a way to compromise with neighbors you've known for centuries. Surely you can be better than your anger." The mediation took 3 days. But in the end, both sides agreed to a peaceful settlement. As they left, one of the delegates stopped by Do-hyun. "You humans have changed things. Made us think differently about conflict. That was never our goal," Do-hyun said honestly. "We just wanted to do the right thing. And, perhaps, but you showed us it was possible. That's worth more than any treaty." That evening, the core group gathered in a private room. Do-hyun, Mireille, Sua, Sojun, and several others who had been at Talmar Prime. They met like this once a year, remembering those who hadn't survived. "Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice?" Mireille asked. "Going to Talmar when we did?" "Every day," Sua admitted. 47 good people died. I knew most of them. Treated their wounds. Held their hands when they passed. But 400,000 lived," Sojun added. "And the galaxy changed. Not just because we fought, but because of how we fought. Because we chose mercy over vengeance." Do-hyun raised his glass. "To the ones we lost. And to the galaxy they helped create." They drank in silence. Outside, across the galaxy, the effects of that single battle continued to spread. Young people of all species joined the defense forces, inspired by the human example. Conflicts were resolved through mediation more often than war. Pirates and raiders found fewer easy targets. The myths about humans hadn't disappeared, but they had transformed. Now, when aliens told stories about humans to their children, they didn't speak of demons or berserkers. They spoke of the day when strangers came to help, expecting nothing in return. When warriors chose to protect instead of conquer. When the strong showed mercy to the weak. They spoke of humans not as myths, but as hope. As proof that even the most dangerous species could choose to be kind. And somewhere, on every world where humans had touched, children went to sleep, hearing not frightening tales, but inspiring ones. Stories about the day humans entered the battlefield and changed everything.